So tonight we're going to talk about Cascading Style Sheets Part 2, which will cover the new stuff in CSS3. What we showed last week really was stuff that existed already in in CSS2. So this will be mostly new stuff as of 3, and just like with HTML5, there's some cool new stuff. So we'll look at different effects. The CSS that we have here is mostly adding some different effects of text and shadowing and three-dimensional objects, and it's got some really cool stuff that we'll look at that makes things a lot better, including some different variations on colors as well. Again, text shadows, rounded corners is something that's new as well. Different variations on colors, shadows on boxes, stuff that you really couldn't do before, you can do now. Multiple background images, so some pretty cool stuff. Transitions and transformations, we'll talk about that. Those are new properties. Skew as well is a method. Talk about some of the fonts, web fonts you can download, multi-column layouts, media queries, and other resources. So the CSS, first we'll start with the text shadows, and this is new as of CSS3. Makes it easy to add a text shadow effect in any text field. It has 4 values, which includes the number of pixels that the text shadow will appear to the left and right. A negative value moves the text shadow to the left and a positive to the right. Vertical offsets as well, up or down from the text, again by negative or positive values. A blur radius and pixels of the shadow. A blur radius of 0 pixel would result in the shadow with a sharper edge, no blur, and a greater value would increase blurring. And color also determines the color of the text shadow. Okay, so here's an example right here. So we see text shadow of minus 4 pixels, means it's going to be off by 4 pixels to the left and up 4 pixels from the center. This will add a shadow. The font size will be 400% increase the font size, which will give us something that looks like that. Now I've also got all these examples here as well if you want to look at them. And this does it in color. So you can see you got a little bit of a text shadow there, which is kind of nice. It's a visual effect that is new as of CSS3, and I think prior to CSS3, you probably would have had to have done this with an image. I don't think you could have done it in HTML in any way without this. You probably would have had to have used an image. So it's kind of a nice thing to be able to add. Border radius property allows you to add rounded corners. This is a nice thing too, because in the past you've only had rectangles. But now you can round stuff. That's something, again, if you want to do rounded corners in CSS2, you need just to use an image for that. So you no longer need to do that. So it's another nice thing. It also takes things with like the radius and the left and the right point positions. So we'll take a look at this. We're creating a div with a border, solid navy, some padding, the background color, width, text align, border radius 15 pixels, which means it's going to round it around 15 pixels, and the bottom margin will be 20 pixels. The round 2 also gives different borders and backgrounds, and puts the radius at 50 pixels to increase the border radius. Text align again is centered, the total width is 50 pixels. So if we go and look at this thing, we'll create the border from the div, and for div ID equals round 2, which will increase it. And again, I've got this example as well, which we can look at. And by the way, most of these examples will not, I'm doing it in Firefox. They'll work in Google as well, but I tried most of these examples and they do not work in Internet Explorer 9. So if you're using Internet Explorer 9, and this isn't working for you, it's because you're using Internet Explorer. Go get Google is what I would recommend. I'm doing it in Firefox, but I tested it in in Google as well as Internet Explorer and Opera and Safari, and the only one that didn't work in was IE. So that's kind of a nice effect. I mean, again, that's something that you couldn't do in previous versions. Color CSS allows you to express color in several ways. In addition to the standard colors with the hexadecimal, you also get some different values. You actually get a fourth value, RGBA, A being alpha, gives you greater control of the exact colors, the different shades of it. Chrome work best for you? Yeah, Chrome. We can use Chrome too. I've got Chrome here, and actually I've got Chrome right here. It seemed to me that it worked equally well. Okay, so this is a different one. But this is the one we just looked at. Yeah, it seems to work equally. This stuff, the CSS stuff, seems to work equally well in Chrome and Firefox. I didn't really notice any major differences. You've got your alpha colors there. The alpha value, which represents opacity, can be any value in range of 0.0, fully transparent, to 1.0, fully opaque. So it allows you to have a variety of different backgrounds, or really opacity, which is great as well. You really couldn't do this one in the past either. You have to use an image for this as well. The resulting color would be half opaque if it's 0.5, and there are increasing colors as well. And there's quite a few of them, as you can see, 16 million different colors. Allows you to express color using U, saturation and lightness, also with alpha. The U is a color or shade, so it's a shade of a color. You get more variety there as well. The value for red, which is the beginning of the wheel, is 0. Green hues have around 120 and blues 240. The U of 359, which is just left of 0 on the wheel, would result in red U. And we'll look at how that works too. The saturation or the intensity of the U, which is also in percentages. Lightness is the intensity of the light or luminance of the U. We'll see some examples of this as well. A lightness of 50% is actual U. If you decrease the amount of light to 0%, the color appears completely dark or black. If you increase it to 100%, the color would be white, essentially. So, for example, if you wanted to have a value to get the same color red as in our example of the RGB value, you would set the background property as follows. So using percentages instead. Let's see. You can shadow any block level element in CSS3. So a block level, again, like a div is a block level. And you can do them, create a box shadow. And again, you can set the right and left positions to the top and bottom as well as the blur radius. Alright, so here's an example here, which creates a div. This is going to create a box shadow around 25 pixels, 25 pixels, 50 pixels, and dim gray. It's going to float to the left, and the margins will be there. Again, box 2, height and width of 50 at 200 pixels, where it's going to shadow. Again, this is going to be left 25 pixels, 25 pixels. Now the color of plum, and overall the text will align center. So within this div, we'll get this box shadow. And let's go ahead and look at better example here. So you see the box shadow there. Dim gray is the background, and the offsets of the negative and positive pixels where the shadow comes into play. And again, this is really nice. You didn't have this at all in CIS2. Very nice. And we can look at Firefox as well and see how it comes out in Firefox. And yeah, Firefox works pretty well too. IE, on the other hand, I don't think works at all. Let's see. I don't think it worked. Some of the stuff worked, but not all of it. I'm on 9, which is the latest version. Oh, actually, this one did work. Okay, this is one of the ones that did work, but we had a few others that didn't work. Might have been some of the later examples that didn't work. Yeah, text shadow didn't work, for example. That one didn't work. Okay, so some of it works in IE, but most of it, or a lot of it, doesn't. Okay. Linear gradients, vendor prefixes. Linear gradients are a type of image that gradually transitions from one color to the next horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. This is another great thing that in the past you needed to do images in JavaScript to get to do this. Now you don't. You can transition between as many colors as you like and specify the points at which to change colors, often called color stops. Represents pixels or percentages along the gradient line, the angle at which the gradient extends. You can also use gradients in any property that accepts an image. So I think this uses an image, but the actual visual effect is done by CSS. In the past, you had to use JavaScript to get the same effect. We'll look at figure 5.4, which is example 4 on my webpage. Create linear. That would just be this example. Okay, so we'll look at exactly how that works in a moment. Background property for each of the 3 linear gradient styles, vertical, horizontal, and diagonal, is defined multiple times in each style. Once for WebKit-based browsers, once for Mozilla Firefox, and once using the standard CSS syntax for linear gradients. This occurs frequently when working with CSS3 because many of its features are not yet finalized. Many of the browsers have gone and begun implementing these features so you can use them now. So, like Google, like we said, is pretty good. Okay, so this will be this example here. We've got source here. The different divs and setting it up. 200 pixels by 200 pixels, border, padding, text align, background. Now this is going in using the WebKit. It's actually using a couple of different ways of doing it. WebKit is the one that Google and Safari, I believe, both use the WebKit. Mozilla has its own. And linear gradient, and linear gradient is the CSS one. So 3 different ways to define the same one. I have to see how IE works with this one. This one I'd be a little curious on. Horizontal, we set up some different settings as well. Different colors, the different percentages of white, and yellow, and orange, and that's how you get those mixes. So if we were to look at this in the first one, we get this one is a vertical linear, horizontal and diagonal linear. The first one is vertical, which has got colors starting at 15%, 50%, and 75%. And you can see how that goes right there, how it fades into it. And linear gradient ultimately will be done this way, once they're all compliant. And for the horizontal, it's something similar. 15, 50, and 75 for orange, which we can see we've got going on a horizontal plane. Then the other going on a diagonal plane. And it does it by doing 135 degrees. This one is left. This one is top. Alright. Are there any questions so far? Okay, inventor prefix is WebKit. Begins with the background property. The linear gradient for WebKit, which differs slightly from what Firefox uses. WebKit is used. Actually, we should look at this in IE. It'd be interesting to see how IE supports some of this stuff. And it doesn't. There you go. IE doesn't support that. Safari, I think, should. Let's see. I believe Safari should.